I want to ask Lee Habib, how the hell did you get a documentary history show about storytelling to be acceptable on so many news talk stations in such a short time? We're talking hundreds now, and get such critical acclaim, ratings approval, and the momentum just continuing to be without any end in sight.
Well, I'm still involved with Salem, with Phil, the folks at Salem every day, hitting the line with great talk. But what was missing, and I worked with a lot of high net worth folks like Bernie Marcus, who founded Home Depot, Phil Anschutz, who is a remarkable entrepreneur who owns the Staples Center and Anschutz Entertainment Group. And when I would get to know them better, they said, you know, we don't know what we're fighting over. We're fighting about Democrats and Republicans. It's Republicans and Democrats. But what about the story of our country? What about memory? You know, one of my favorite guests was a guy named Louisa Lin. He's an American journalist who's Chinese. And he went to China and showed pictures of Tiananmen Square to Beijing's graduates. And only 5% recognized it. Another 5% he thought recognized it were afraid to say they recognized it for fear that this was some kind of governmental experiment. So China was erasing the bad parts of its history. And in America, we were erasing the good parts. And all of our universities and schools were teaching only the bad parts. So I thought, with the help of these financiers, this is a nonprofit. I would hire a great bunch of young storytellers, older storytellers, historians, and we would tell stories about the American experiment. From George Washington to Bernie Marcus. I mean, the guy gets fired at 49 from Home Depot, from his job at Handy Andy's. And he goes to Home Depot, and at 49, broke. And his two partners did too. And he created this empire. How did it happen? Who is Henry Ford? And by the way, what about all the great stories of American generosity and love that are happening every day around us? Mm-hmm. In other words, what are we fighting over was what I was trying to solve. And so this, I think, sat perfectly towards the end of the day when you've had left versus right all day long. This is a respite, an oasis, a sort of a counter-programming inside the programming. And the biggest problem, Michael, we were trying to solve, not only I need a rest, I need a break, but I still want my values reinforced. But I think the bigger thing was, how do we create intellectual property that doesn't die the minute it's played? You know, when Rush died, I thought, what happens to all that IP? In TV, Seinfeld goes on. Bob Dylan just sold his catalog. Bruce Springsteen just drove his catalog. There's money in those ills. Why doesn't radio think like that? Why do we make disposable product? And so that was the other thing I was trying to do here. Our catalog is Stephen Ambrose from the grave, Richard, the greatest historians. And one day we hope this catalog will have value. It's evergreen material, all of it. And it's beautiful. And people want to come back and listen to our Memorial Day episode. Every Memorial Day, it's the same show. And people like that the way they like a Charlie Brown's Christmas. People don't get sick of a Charlie Brown's Christmas. They want it 50 years later. Radio, I believe, could have that kind of quality programming. And I think we didn't invest in it. We invested in sales, in this, in that, but we've spent $17 million to date making this show because of 5 or 6 people's beneficence.
Yeah, I want to get back to that.
And I think that's the key, the investment.
You call your company American Private Radio, and it took me about a year. Sometimes things are so obvious and you're thick. It goes, private, why is he calling it private radio? And I realized, oh, it's the opposite of public radio. Yep. It actually, I didn't connect with that, but it's brilliant. And I want to ask you in a moment, I want to move around about the financing of it, because it ties into the whole name, American Private Radio, American Public Radio. One of the things you talked about, though, and I want to mention, I was derelict in my duty to say the name of his show is Our American Stories. So